Simgiget, Sigidamhanak Kobowulsik. Before I begin, I'd just like to take the time to acknowledge the traditional territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations, whose territories we're meeting on today. As was noted in my bio, my name is Neil, and I'm the Executive Director of the British Columbia Aboriginal Network on Disabilities Society. And before I begin, I understand that this is going to be broadcast later on YouTube, and my daughter is a big YouTube fan, so I would ask you this. Could you all say in a quiet tone, "Hello, Katie"? Hello, Katie. I also have a son, but he's bugging me, so you don't have to say anything to him. It's not very inclusive, but that's how it is. So I'm very pleased to be here tonight and to have the opportunity to speak with such a distinguished panel and interested participants here in the audience. When I was first asked by Kaylin, wherever she is, to speak, I wasn't really familiar with a Walrus talk event, so I asked her what she wanted me to speak about specifically. And she said, Neil, speak about whatever you feel comfortable with speaking about. So I thought about it for a while, and after quite a bit of consideration and a thought process, I came up with a topic that I thought was relevant provincially, nationally, and internationally. And of course, that would be, who was the best captain of the USS Enterprise? Was it Kirk or was it Picard? And of course, it was Kirk. So, instead, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our organization, BCANS. So has anybody ever heard of BCANS before here in the audience? A few of you? So we're an Indigenous not-for-profit organization which has been established, which was established in 1991. We're the only Indigenous disability organization of our type in Canada. So when you talk about inclusive communities and accessibilities and having supports, that really says something about the Indigenous disability sector. We hold consultative status with the United Nations, and we provide services both within First Nations communities and non-First Nations communities across British Columbia. And typically, we maintain about 8,000 client files. We work in different areas, including case management, the Registered Disability Savings Plan, PWD, Persons with Disabilities Adjudication for the benefits, and a lot of work within accessibility from an Indigenous context. And that includes Bill C-81, which is the federal accessibility legislation. Are you familiar with that? That's out now, going through. National Accessibility Week, and the upcoming developments of accessibility legislation within the province of BC. So we're busy. We also created Indigenous Disability Awareness Month, and that was an initiative that was created to highlight the significant contributions that Indigenous persons living with a disability bring to all of our communities, and also the barriers that they face. This has been recognized here in BC and Saskatchewan by the Assembly of First Nations, Métis Nation BC, and many others. And it was recommended to Canada by the United Nations to proclaim and recognize Indigenous Disability Awareness Month annually. And why is that important? It's important because inclusion of this segment of our population is not there, and it hasn't been there for a long time. We've made some steps forward, but we have a long way to go. When we talk about Indigenous disability in Canada, we know that with any person living with a disability, accessibility issues are a problem. Government policies that are restrictive, the cross-jurisdictional issues that Rick spoke about, all those things play a factor. And that's no different within the Indigenous sector. The frequency of disability among Canadians is approximately 22%. Within the Indigenous community, it's about twice that. And other research has shown that it's even 3 or 4 times higher in different age groups. And we know that the prevalence of becoming disabled for Indigenous women, for impoverished populations, such as conditions seen within many First Nations communities in Canada, and neighborhoods significantly increase. In 2016, 80% of the First Nations in Canada had a medium income below the poverty line. BC, of course, enjoys the highest number of First Nations communities in Canada at about 203, and we have about 270,000 Indigenous people living within the province. And when we apply that rate, we can conservatively say there are about 82,000 Indigenous people of all ages living in our province. But despite that, we often find ourselves as the ands. And so when I say the ands, I'm talking about inclusion within disability sector, inclusion within the, developing policies, just inclusion across the board. And that comes from both government and from our civil society partners as well. We're often put in a place where people will develop policies, or governments will develop policies, or organizations. They'll put them in place, they'll have them ready to go, and then they'll say, oh, and we better include the Indigenous. And we've got to get past that. If we are truly going to be an inclusive Canada and a progressive Canada, then those are barriers and those are obstacles that we got to get out of the way. And we focus on that at BCANS, and we've really tried to move the needle forward, but we've got a long way to go. And before I leave here tonight, I just want to say, despite the work that we all have to do, and we have to do it together, and to make Canada a truly accessible and inclusive country, regardless of our ancestry, of our color, or gender, or perceived ability. BC is the province that the rest of Canada looks to when it's looking for innovation within the disability sector. BC has proven itself. We have a long way to go, but it is the leader in Canada, and I think that's something that everybody here should recognize and be very proud of. Thank you very much. Don't worry about clapping. Nobody does anyways.